Candace, I've come to ask you for a favor. I can't work with this arm, and I'm currently on leave from my part-time job. Without working, I don't get paid, and life is tough. Could you possibly lend me some money for living expenses? My husband and mother-in-law made false claims and demanded money from me. I believed them and wanted to help, so I provided the money as they requested. However, my husband was having an affair, and my mother-in-law was indulging in gambling, using the money I had struggled to gather for their entertainment. I felt pathetic beyond words when faced with this betrayal. When I confronted them with the facts, they reacted with outrage. Unable to bear it any longer, when I decided to divorce, they insulted me. If you get divorced, you'll never be able to marry again. You're just a junior high school graduate. Now we'll be free from the unpleasant daughter-in-law. I don't mind if you divorce. Faced with my husband and mother-in-law's ruthless comments, I felt that divorce alone was not a solution. I couldn't forgive this betrayal. I planned to make them pay for the suffering they caused me. My name is Candace. I am 25 years old, and it has been 3 years since I got married. My husband, Peter, works at an apparel shop. We met when he visited the family restaurant where I was working as a part-time waitress. Have you been working here long? Yes, for about 5 years now. You've been here a long time? I always see you, so I feel familiar. Would you like to go somewhere with me next time? Surprised by his unexpected invitation, I accepted it. Having had no deep interactions with the opposite sex and living a lonely life, my heart wanted to experience youthful days. I grew up with my mother, as my father had already left us following an affair that led to my parents' divorce. My mother was a single mom and couldn't afford luxuries, but she did everything she could for me. When it was time for me to advance to high school, my mother fell ill and couldn't work, so I gave up studying and decided to support our household with my part-time job. A few years later, I met my husband, an older man. He seemed mature and was attractive to me. He took me to various places, and each time I was touched. Where shall we go next time? The seaside is nice, and a spa trip would be fun?
Right.
Since I hadn't experienced much, such plans were very fresh and exciting. My husband always invited me to new worlds, like a prince out of a storybook. Enchanted by the illusion of an ideal life, I decided to marry him just 6 months after we started dating. My mother warned me that it was too early to marry, but perhaps out of guilt for not being able to let me fully enjoy my youth, she didn't oppose it too strongly. My mother had fully recovered and resumed her previous job. My husband was also the only son from a single-parent family, which may have played a role in our decision to marry. When I first met my mother-in-law, she was very pleasant and kind, but I somehow felt uneasy and developed an aversion to her. I discussed this issue with my husband. Don't worry about it. I was also nervous when I first met your mother. You'll get used to it over time. If there's a problem, I'll support you, so don't worry. His comforting words calmed my heart. However, at that point, I still did not understand his true character. After we got married, we bought a condo. Rather than paying rent every month, it's smarter to buy a condo and pay for the mortgage. It will ultimately become an asset. That's true. Since you, Candace, have more work experience than me, it'll be easier for the mortgage to get approved in your name. Then let's do that. I was genuinely happy to be able to live with my husband and followed his suggestion without any doubt. When we started our life together, I was asked to take on night shifts at work. I'm the type who can't say no, so I reluctantly agreed. As a result, despite being newlyweds, Our time together was almost non-existent. One holiday, our days off coincided, and we were relaxing at home. "Hey, I'm sorry to ask this, but could you lend me some money?" "What happened? Why do you suddenly need money?" My husband started explaining with a serious look. "The sales at the store have dropped, and my salary has been cut. I couldn't tell you right away. That must have been tough. I'll pay you back once my salary is back to normal." "Understood. But we're a couple, so there's no need to strain yourself." "Sorry, do you still have savings?" "Yes, just a little. But don't worry, I'm making more with the night shifts. I'll cover for you, Peter. That really helps." However, I continued to support my husband financially, and I eventually lost track of how much I had lent him. Originally, there should have been no problem, but suddenly my mother-in-law visited. "Susan, what brings you here?" I noticed the bandage wrapped around her arm and asked in surprise. "Candace, I fell down the stairs and broke my right arm." "Oh, are you okay? Have you talked to Peter about this?" "No, I don't want to worry him unnecessarily, so I haven't told him yet." "I see. It must be hard to stand and talk here. Please come inside." We sat down in the living room and began our conversation. "Candace, I've come to ask you for a favor. I can't work with this arm, and I'm currently on leave from my part-time job. Without working, I don't get paid, and life is tough. Could you possibly lend me some money for living expenses?" "Me? Yes, there are circumstances I can't discuss with Peter. You're the only one I can ask, Candace. If there are circumstances she can't discuss with Peter, then it can't be helped." I decided to give her $2,000 for living expenses, in the hope that lending money to her would improve our relationship a bit. I had been giving the extra money from my night shifts to my husband, so I had no choice but to take out money from my savings to give to my mother-in-law. This was honestly quite difficult. Even when I was tired, I tried to minimize expenses by cooking for myself and preparing lunch for my husband regularly, and sometimes I just ate instant food or skipped meals altogether. During such a frugal period, while cleaning the house, I found an unfamiliar strand of blonde hair. It clearly wasn't mine or my husband's. I was greatly disturbed. This could only be a sign of my husband having an affair, and it seemed he had brought someone into our home while I was at work. I was distraught and desperately searched for more evidence of his cheating. Then, I found a pay slip. Checking how much his salary had been cut, I discovered that there had been no reduction at all. In fact, it was higher than the amount he had previously mentioned to me. I was shocked twofold by my partner's infidelity and the deceit about his salary. Not knowing whom to turn to for advice, I headed to my mother-in-law's house. Thinking about the money I had lent her, I was convinced that my mother-in-law would be on my side. As I approached her house, I couldn't believe my eyes. My mother-in-law emerged from a casino. "Susan, what are you doing here?" She looked a bit startled, but asked calmly, "Huh? Candace, why are you here? I came to talk to you." "But you were playing slots. Being alone at home gets depressing. So I was just taking a little break." "But you're supposed to be out of money."
Right.
"I only used a little." "That money is the money I lent you, isn't it?" "No, it was just a little left over from my last paycheck. I'm using the money you lent me gratefully for this month's living expenses." I couldn't believe her, but the issues with my husband were more severe, so I avoided further probing. "Candace, I ended up having to take leave from work for the rest of the month, so I will have no salary next month. Could you possibly lend me some money for next month's living expenses?" Her lies were evident. She no longer had a brace on her right arm. Yet, I made a deliberate decision to lend her money to maintain a favorable position with her. Of course, but can we talk for a bit? Thank you, Candace. You really are understanding. It's such a relief. She was pleased, and we immediately proceeded to her house. Once inside, I told her everything about my husband. Men always cheat. I experienced a lot when I was young. Why don't you try fighting back, Candace? Her inappropriate suggestion shocked me. As for the money, I'm not too sure. I haven't spoken to Peter recently. But maybe watch a bit longer? He'll surely pay everything back at once. Her irresponsible comment left me speechless. So, can I borrow the money for next month's living expenses today? I have some payments coming up. What? Today? Could you come back in a week at night? That's fine. A week later was my day off, and I planned to confront my husband in front of my mother-in-law then. A week later, the day arrived. I eagerly awaited my husband and mother-in-law at our home, and she arrived first. Candace, I'm here. Susan, please come in. It's okay right here. I'll leave as soon as I get the money. I shouldn't overstay my welcome in a newlywed's home. She stated this hesitantly, but her true interest was clearly just the money. It seems her desire to see her son had also faded. Susan, you no longer need that arm brace, do you? Then there should be no problem meeting Peter. He'll be back soon, so please wait in the living room. I'll give you the money secretly so that Peter doesn't know, so don't worry. Yes, I might as well see Peter after a long time. I invited her over to use her to confront my husband. If she leaves now, the plan falls through. If she's using me, I need to use her to protect myself. She quietly sat in the living room drinking coffee, seeming uncomfortable with the idea of staying long. Then my husband returned home. On my days off, he always returned home at a specific time, as if to implicitly claim he's not cheating. I'm home. Welcome back. Your mother is here too. Peter, it's been a long time. Mom, what are you doing here so late? Just came to see how you and Candace are doing. Really? That's unusual. First, sit down. I'll prepare some coffee. I made coffee, and the three of us sat down in the living room. Despite it being a rare reunion, my husband and mother-in-law barely spoke. Even if there was nothing to talk about, such silence was unusual. It seems their interest in each other had faded. However, this silence provided me an environment conducive to bringing up the main topic. Actually, there's something I need to confirm with you. Since your mother is here, I'd like her to hear it too. What do you want to ask? At that moment, I took out the strand of blonde hair and showed it to them. What is this? Peter suddenly changed his color. I don't know, maybe it's someone else's hair. He was clearly irritated. I found this when I was cleaning your room. Well, I deal with many people at work, so it must have stuck to my clothes. I resolved to ask him directly. Are you cheating on me? What? Of course not. Are you doubting me just because of that? It's not just the hair. There are other pieces of evidence too. I intentionally tested him. In fact, there was no other evidence. However, I intuitively felt that he was being unfaithful, though baselessly. What other evidence do you have? Be specific. I found it inconvenient to be pursued, so I quickly changed the subject. Also, your salary hasn't been cut, has it? I found the pay slip while cleaning. Why are you looking at that without permission? First, I want the money I've lent you so far back. Why all of a sudden? You know I can't pay it back. Didn't you say yourself not to strain ourselves because we're family? I didn't lend you money so you could use it for cheating. I'm not using it for cheating. So, you admit to cheating. That's a dirty trick. Your method. Ultimately, Peter had been unfaithful. Any remaining affection I had for him had disappeared. Ignoring Peter's reaction, I focused on his mother. Susan, if I can't collect the money from Peter, I can't lend you any. Candace, that's not fair. I came all this way for the money. That's cruel. Clearly, both Peter and his mother were only thinking of themselves. It seemed no problem to them that the son was borrowing money from his wife without the mother's knowledge, or that he was having an affair. Perhaps these two saw marriage as an opportunity to use me. I was preparing to make a decision as the situation worsened. I can no longer live with you. I am filing for divorce. Peter and his mother could not hide their surprise at these words. If you divorce, you'll never be able to marry again. So, you've always looked down on me like that? Yes, because you're just a junior high graduate. How does educational background affect marriage? Despite expecting such a reaction, Peter's insults shook me. Candace, calm down. Susan, you only want my money, right? That's not true. I can't lend you any more money. I also need you to return the $2,000 I lent you before. What will you do? My mother-in-law wore an indescribable expression. If that's the case, fine. I have no further business here, so I was just an ATM to you after all. My mother-in-law sighed as if she was fed up. I'll finally be free from this unpleasant daughter-in-law. I don't mind if you divorce. She suddenly changed her tone and expressed her displeasure. Peter appeared uninterested, looking at his cell phone. I don't want anything to do with you anymore. With those words, I left the pre-prepared divorce papers in front of Peter. You had this prepared. I've already filled out my part. It just needs your signature. I'll come to pick it up tomorrow. Peter and his mother looked at the divorce papers expressionlessly. Without saying anything, I hurried out of the house and went straight to my parents' house. I'm back. What happened? Why are you alone at this late hour? Mom, it seems I rushed into marriage. I should have listened to your advice. What exactly happened? I explained everything to my mother. So that's what was happening. I should have opposed it more. I'm really sorry. No, but I'm not just going to end it with a divorce. I'll definitely get back the money I lent them, and I'll seek appropriate compensation. But do you have evidence of his infidelity and debt? It's okay. I felt that it might turn out this way today, so I recorded all our conversations earlier. I proudly showed the recorder to my mother. Thinking of that, you're quite something. Yes, sadly, my prediction came true. I'll consult a lawyer tomorrow. Indeed, you can't let what happened just pass. If there's anything I can help with, don't hesitate to ask. Thank you, Mom. Is it okay if I stay here for a while? Of course. This is your home. I really appreciate it. That night I couldn't sleep, filled with humiliation and disappointment. The next day I went to my house to retrieve the signed divorce papers and check that Peter had signed them. Immediately after, I went to the condo management company to proceed with the sale. Fortunately, since the title was in my name, the process went smoothly. I had no intention of living in that house any longer and felt no need to inform Peter. The property was mine, bought and paid for by me. There was no reason to let my estranged husband live there anymore. Concurrently, I hired movers to remove the household items, all of which I had purchased and therefore owned. A few days after the move, my husband called, shocked to find the house empty. "What's going on?" "The TV and fridge, everything's gone. Since I paid for everything myself, why should I leave them there for you? Never set foot in this house again. Your belongings are no longer here." His response was as predictable as it was agitated. However, the matter was far from over. A few days later, it seemed the condo manager had visited my husband. Then he called again. "What are you doing? Why did you sell the condo? You took the TV too, didn't you?" "That house is mine. The condo was in my name, and I made all the payments. It's only natural for me to sell it since I no longer plan to live there." "Don't be stupid. Where am I supposed to live now?" "That's not my problem. Why don't you go live with your affair partner?" "This isn't a joke. I won't forgive you." His words sounded lawless. How could he think to continue living in a condo he never paid for? It was incomprehensible. And then, the ultimate retaliation. I demanded compensation from my husband and asked my mother-in-law to repay the money I had lent her with interest. The day the invoice arrived, an angry call came from my husband. "Hey, what is this? Why such a high claim? I am asking for compensation because of your infidelity. Please pay it soon." "There's no reason I should pay. That amount is insane. You don't even have any proof, do you?" "If you need proof, I have it. I've recorded all our recent conversations with your mom, and your admission of infidelity in those recordings will serve as evidence." "No way, you recorded it." "Yes, I couldn't trust you anymore. If necessary, I can access the condo building's elevator surveillance footage to identify the visitors, likely while I was working night shifts. Furthermore, I've been recording all our calls. Recently you said, 'This won't end here,' which could be considered a threat. I plan to claim additional compensation." "All right, it was a mistake. I won't contact you again." After that, he hung up and there was no more contact from him. Although my mother-in-law did reach out, expecting my husband would say something, I didn't respond. This decision backfired as she called repeatedly. Finally, when I answered, she screamed at me, "So you finally pick up, you terrible daughter-in-law." It seemed she hadn't received any information from my husband. "Listen, I have recorded this call and all recent calls. The fact that I lent you $2,000 and your acknowledgement of it are all recorded. Denying it now is pointless. Why not just pay me back honestly?" Hearing this, my mother-in-law ended the call without a word. Perhaps she realized that arguing was futile. For me, it wasn't about the money, it was about exacting revenge on these contemptuous family members. As a result, my husband lost the condo and had to return to his mother's house. After being ousted from the condo, it seems his affair partner also abandoned him. Despite reaching out to various people, including co-workers, clients, and business partners, the revelation of his infidelity damaged his reputation. He eventually lost his job and had to take up multiple part-time jobs at a much lower salary. This was the result of misusing his wife's money. He is now working day after day to pay the compensation, having lost his job and been deserted by his former lover. My mother-in-law, too, had to stop gambling and started working part-time to pay the compensation I demanded. Fortunately, the persistent contact from my husband and his family ceased, and I now enjoy peaceful days. With the night shifts fully staffed, I was moved to day shifts. During this time, the manager called me in. "I appreciate your support during the night shifts. You've really supported the store, thank you. the higher-ups have noticed, and there's an offer for a full-time position. How about taking this chance to work as a full-time employee? Transitioning from part-time work that I've been doing for a long time to a full-time position was a very welcome proposal. I feel young and the future looks promising, since I've risen from nothing with a middle school education to now being engaged in fulfilling work as a full-time employee.